Srimad-Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 6, Text 28. Prahlad Maharaj continued, I received this knowledge from the great saint Narada Muni, who is always engaged in devotional service. This knowledge, which is called Bhagavad Dharma, is fully scientific. It is based on logic and philosophy and is freed from all material contamination. We'll do text 29 and 30 also, which is the end of the chapter, because both of these verses have no purport. The sons of the demons replied, Dear Prahlad, neither you nor we know any teacher or spiritual master other than Shanda and Amarka, the sons of Sukracharya. After all, we are children and they are controllers. And they our controllers. For you especially, who always remain within the palace, it is very difficult to associate with a great personality. Dear friend, most gentle one, would you kindly explain how it was possible for you to hear Narada? Kindly dispel our doubts in this regard. So, Prahlad Maharaj is explaining here that this knowledge, Bhagavad Dharma, was received from Narada Muni. And as yesterday we explained, it is not possible to actually have knowledge of the Supreme unless one surrenders to the lotus feet of a devotee and takes shelter of him. Otherwise, this knowledge does not come automatically, nor by simply some kind of sentimental culture. It only comes when one takes shelter of a devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this knowledge, Prahlad Maharaj is explaining here, is fully scientific, based on logic and philosophy. It is not simply some dogma. Certain religious systems just give some dogma or some doctrine which is to be accepted and memorized by the participants in that religious system without any real explanation or any logical system built up within it. It is simply some ideas and words, phrases, rules, regulations, rituals, which are given and people follow. That's all. They've been following for hundreds of years and their parents followed, therefore they feel like they should follow also, although they really don't have any idea why they're doing it. So, this knowledge of Bhagavad Dharma, obviously, because it comes from Bhagavan, must be full of knowledge. Real knowledge. That means also it is perfectly consistent with logic and philosophy. Bhagavan, Bhaga means opulences and Van means one who possesses. So Bhagavan means one who possesses all opulences in full. And one of the opulences of Krishna is full knowledge. So that which is full of knowledge can never be full of ignorance. And that which is illogical and unphilosophical is that which is contaminated by ignorance. So, since the Bhagavad Dharma, or this philosophy of the absolute truth, is absolute, therefore it must be fully logical. It must make absolute sense in relationship to the living entities. Thus, when one sees through the eyes of the scripture, he can understand everything that is occurring within the world, within himself, within his social relationships, etc. Because that logic applies to each and every aspect of this material creation. And philosophy is there to help one gain a deep insight into why this logic is there, why these activities are occurring, what is the actual functioning of the living being in his relationship with the Supreme Lord. In this way, the philosophy is there to bring one to a higher point. Philosophy exists within the human society to elevate people to the higher platform of life. Logic is there. Logic makes things easy to comprehend and to deal with, logical systems. But philosophy is there for elevation and understanding, real understanding, vijnana. Vijnana. Jnana, this is the scientific system, knowledge. That may be very logical. But vijnana, that means more realized philosophy. Vijnana is knowledge which is very great. Two kinds of knowledge, that which is simply memorized and that which is deeply understood. Although it may be the same knowledge, But because it is understood differently by the receiver of that knowledge, it is known as Gyan or Vigyan. And how do we experience this Gyan or Vigyan? By the way in which it is again given back to us by the receiver or possessor of that Gyan or Vigyan. Specifically, this is used in reference to spiritual life. Somebody may have Gyan. He may know Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That may be his knowledge. But he may not be able to ever explain that to anybody, convince anybody else of that, or even say it with any kind of conviction which gives them some feeling of Krishna within their heart. That can only come from the person who's got Vigyan. Realized deep philosophical understanding of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When he says Krishna, Krishna appears in that sound vibration. When a materialist or one who only has Gyan says Krishna, it is another word like any other word in the dictionary. Well, there is, of course, effect, but the effect is so much less than when a realized devotee of the Lord says Krishna. That is the difference. Because Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, manifests himself in his potencies according to the surrender of the devotee. Therefore, those who are fully surrendered to Krishna, they can become the instruments of Krishna. And Krishna's will be manifested through them. It will not occur due to their abilities or karma or to their luck. No. It will occur due to Krishna's desire to use them for spreading the mission or performing the activities he wants performed. Therefore, Vigyan is superior to Gyan. Just like there may have been many warriors in the battlefield of Kurukshetra who had Gyan, who had knowledge, who had an ability to fight and knew the fighting shastra perfectly well. But because Arjuna had Vigyan, not just of fighting, but of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then automatically Arjuna had to have victory. Yatra Yogeshwaro Krishna Tatra Dhanur Dharodhara Yatra Shri Vijaya what is that? Bhuyo Dhuva Nitir Matir Mama. Sanjay concludes in the Bhagavad Gita that wherever there is Krishna, Yogeshwara, the Supreme Master of mystic power, and wherever there is Arjuna, Dharodhara, the expert user of Dhanur, the fighting weapon, there must be victory, there must be morality, there must be every kind of success. Why? Because Krishna is there. Wherever Krishna is, there's success. Wherever Krishna isn't, there's failure. Just like we have seen many great dynasties and empires built up throughout the world over periods of time. But each and every one of these dynasties, after a short period of time, has crumbled inexplicably, even when it seemed they were at the height of their power. Why? Because of the forces of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Where there is no Krishna, there is darkness, there is ignorance. Where there is ignorance, there is destruction. Because in this world, the mode of ignorance is the power of destruction. Wherever there is ignorance, there is destruction. That is a typical aspect of ignorance, is destruction. So where there is no Krishna, there is absolute ignorance. And where the people of the country or the government rejects or fights against Krishna, they must be destroyed. This is the law of nature, the rule of nature. So, where there is Krishna, there must be victory. The opposite number. Where there is Krishna is Shuddha Sattva, the pure mode of goodness, Vasudeva Sattva. That is the state of Vasudeva. That state whereby one's mind is fully absorbed in devotional service of the Lord. Where that exists, there is only victory. That is the statement of Bhagavad Gita. Where there is Krishna, where there is Arjuna. So where there is Krishna and where there is the pure devotee of Krishna, Krishna's will be manifested at that place. That means all success will be there, regardless of external situations. Just like if you consider Lord Chaitanya's time, India had been subjugated by the Muslims, or parts of it anyway. They had conquered in various directions. And although Lord Chaitanya was living within this society at that time, those Muslim kings turned out to at times protect him or surrender to him. Because of the Krishna being there, it didn't matter. Even if they were inimical, they became favorable to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we can understand that regardless of the political situation, it is quite possible to have full Krishna consciousness and full freedom to spread Krishna consciousness and to be Krishna conscious, regardless of the political situation. Simply, we must become fully Krishna conscious. We must become fully convinced of Krishna consciousness. Just like Prahlad Maharaj, the perfect example here. He was the son of a demon. These were all sons of demons. But because Prahlad Maharaj was fully Krishna conscious, they were all becoming Krishna conscious, in spite of Shanda and Amarka, the sons of Sukracharya, who they are teachers. The teachers would never allow Prahlad to preach like that in the class. But because he was Krishna conscious, they couldn't stop him. And the only way they knew to stop him was to kill him, but they couldn't kill him either. In this way he went on, spreading Bhagavad Dharma. Now these children, they understood there was something very peculiar about all this. How that Prahlad, first of all, could learn such a thing, and how he can have the potency to preach it like that. So they questioned him in this way. You grew up the same circumstances. We're all sons of demons. You are in fact living in the palace. You never leave the palace. So how is it you ever associated with a great saintly personality who certainly was never allowed in the palace to teach you? So Prahlad Maharaj will explain that starting in the next chapter. How he associated with Narada Muni. He explained in this first verse, that yes, I have learned everything from Narada Muni. And then they're going to ask, well, how did you learn it from Narada Muni? We never saw Narada Muni anywhere, and you never saw him within that palace. So, another example of a good question. When there's a doubt, they asked. So they're going to get a good answer. To answer which helps expand the ocean of devotional service. So, this point about where there is Krishna, there is success. This should be understood. Often, we try with material means to make a success. We try to develop some opulence, or we try to develop some position. But because it's devoid of Krishna, it ultimately crumbles into a huge failure and brings everybody into that also. But when we do things in full Krishna consciousness, they are an absolute success all the time, simply because the devotee is doing it out of love and devotion for the Supreme Lord. Out of love and devotion for the Supreme Lord. Where there is no Krishna, there is no success, even though it may be perfectly managed or arranged. We remember there was one temple, and the manager of that temple, he was a very expert manager. From the material point of view, there was nobody who had things more arranged perfectly than this person. But because this devotee, he's no longer a devotee, but at that time with this devotee, was arranging everything materially and inspiring the men working under him to materially work, to materially accept positions, to get some fruitive activity from their result. In this way, keeping everything running very wonderfully like a material business office, the whole thing crumbled, and he also left the movement. So although materially it was going perfectly, spiritually it was a desert. It was desolate of any spiritual love or emotion for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, it dried up and died. Whereas we've seen places where management just couldn't ever get together, but because everybody was in love with Krishna, and there was kirtan, there was enthusiasm, then somehow it went on mystically. Mystically it went on, and became great successes, and ultimately got the management also together. So we can understand that no matter how perfectly arranged something is materially, Krishna will cause it to fail. Not even Krishna will cause it to fail. The modes of material nature, which are Krishna's parts of the energies, will cause it to fail automatically. Because of taking shelter in the mode of passion and ignorance, that activity will fail. Whereas those activities which are involved in the transcendental platform, Brahmabhuta platform, will never fail, no matter how hopelessly entangled they seem to be in mismanagement or incapability. They will always be a success. Nowadays, India has fallen victim to this idea that they have to materially manage, and their only problem was all this religiosity. Now they have to get everything together and manage it very nicely materially. And although they've made very nice, from their point of view, management systems, it's always a failure. Nothing ever succeeds. Always a failure, again and again and again. Why? Because they've given up Krishna. And whereas previously, it was going on. People had things. They were happy. And now, they don't have anything. And they're getting less and less every day. And it's being taken away more and more every day by the forces of nature. And ultimately, that place, because they've rejected Krishna, will suffer the worst of all. Because of this. If you've got Krishna and you kick him out, there's no greater offense. If you don't have Krishna and you're offensive, you never had Krishna, that is not such a great offense. And especially when you try to take Krishna, that's greatly to your credit. But when you've had Krishna and you kick him out, there's no greater offense, and one has to suffer very much for that. So, one should understand that success means having Krishna, and that's all. There's no other symptom of success. If we're Krishna conscious, then that is perfect. That is enough. That is perfection. Just to be Krishna conscious. Of course, that also means engaging in service. And one will endeavor in his service to do it as best as possible. But the success of the service is the Krishna consciousness of the performer, not the material perfection of the service. And this is very hard sometimes for us to understand. With our contaminated consciousness here in the West, we always think success means doing it perfectly. That's a success only if you do the first most important thing perfectly. And that is always remember Krishna and never forget him. There are two rules in devotional service. Vishmatat satatam vishnua, vishmatavya najatushit. That, first of all, smartavya satatam vishnur, always remember Krishna. And Vishmatavya Najatushit, never forget Krishna. These two rules are there. When someone may say this is the same rule, but always remember Krishna, never forget him. These are the two most important rules that exist in Krishna consciousness movement. In Sarva Vidhi Nishedaisu Surya Toreva Kinkara. Every other rule and regulation that exists is a servant of these two rules and regulations. If one follows these two rules and regulations, no other rule and regulation is required. Or rather, one will automatically follow all rules and regulations. All rules and regulations are servants of this rule and regulation. Smartavyat satatam Vishnur, like Madhavendra Puri said. Now, I bid my morning bath adieu. I bid my offerings to the forefathers goodbye. I bid my regulative sadhana principles so long. Now, I will see you because I have nothing more to do than to surrender to the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and I have no time to do these other things. So, the principle is, if we always remember Krishna, never forget him in any circumstance, then our lives are perfect in every circumstance. And if we forget Krishna, then our lives are failures in all circumstances. And every activity we perform must be a failure. Therefore, devotees' business is to simply think of Krishna. Force Krishna into his mind. Never let Krishna out of his mind. Meditate on the lotus feet of Krishna. Meditate on the beautiful smiling face of Krishna. Never let that vision out of his mind. Then the devotee is actually very successful in everything he does, because that is pure success. That is actually the essence of Krishna consciousness. Smartata Satatam Vishnur. Always remembering Krishna. Always. But for those who are of the demoniac class of men, their business is always forgetting Krishna, always working against Krishna, trying to kill Krishna, and ultimately they are destroyed by that very same mentality. So we have to learn this art. It is not a very difficult art to learn. It is simply requiring our desire. When we want to learn this art, we can remember this art. When we want to forget this art, we can also forget. It is said, Sarvasya chaham hridishanivishto mattas mitya jnanam apohanam cha. The super soul, Krishna, within the heart, is sitting as our well-wishing friend. And from him comes every bit of remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness that we possess. When we wish to remember, Krishna gives us the ability to remember. When we wish to forget, Krishna helps us to forget. When we wish to gain knowledge, Krishna helps us to gain that knowledge. Srila Prabhupada would often say, you can remember if you want to. If you want to remember, you can remember. When someone says, oh, I forgot. Oh, you wanted to forget. And Krishna helped you to forget. In devotional service, this is the way it works. And when you want to remember, you can remember. And Krishna will help you to remember. So the main principle is how we desire. What is our wish? When we wish for something, we get, because that is the nature of the spiritual world. When we live within the spiritual atmosphere, that wish, that desire is everything. So when we are living in Krishna consciousness and we are desiring to serve Krishna, then Krishna will fulfill that desire. And when we desire to forget Krishna, Krishna will also fulfill that desire. So we have to learn to properly desire. Desire is everything. Without proper desire, then there's no question of success in spiritual life. We have to learn real success. We have to learn the principle of success. Because devotees should become successful. That is the desire of the devotee. Well, then he should learn the principle of success. Always surrender to Krishna, hold on to the lotus feet of Krishna, and desire very much association with Krishna's devotees, devotional service of Krishna, always. Sada, always engaged, constantly, with the heart, within the heart, to desire Krishna. And it's very hard, because the mode of nature, especially lately, will push on the heart and cause us to forget Krishna. But it will cause us to become greatly confused, because there is really no other desire than to serve Krishna. But the pushing is there. Forget Krishna. Why should I forget Krishna? No, forget Krishna. I don't want to forget Krishna. No, forget Krishna. No, forget you. I will remember Krishna. When one thinks like that, then he's fully protected from any obstacle in devotional service. But when one is thinking, no, I will forget Krishna, then immediately he's slaughtered by the material energy. Immediately. It doesn't take but 2 seconds. And the material energy just chops him down. Although he may be big man, material energy chops those legs down to little stumps. And then we become little men again. So, Krishna consciousness is easy for those who desire it. And it's impossible for those who don't desire it. Impossible. So what is the whole purpose of Krishna consciousness movement? To change our desire. To change our desire from material desire to spiritual desire. It's the whole purpose, is to change desire. It is not to free oneself from sinful activities. It is not to free oneself from past, previous reactions. Because that you can do by some kind of prayaschitta or fruitive compensation for previous activities. But it's only bhakti that can destroy the very desire to commit sinful activities. It is only by bhakti that that very desire to be separated from Krishna, to enjoy separately from Krishna, can be wiped out. Only by bhakti and not by any other cause. Devotional service can give one the desire. It can fill up his heart with devotional desire. That is the real fruit of having all sinful activities wiped away. The real fruit is when that devotional desire is built up into a great wish within the heart, which makes one very strongly attached to Krishna. That we have to develop. And when we develop like that, that will be our perfection. Are there any questions? None. So we learn how to desire. Hare Krishna.
Yeah.